Our next guest, we've got a couple already lined up, but our next guest was from our favourite era through the 90s, played some good footy, kicked 5 goals and a quarter in a pre-season game against Freo in Freo's first ever game, and then obviously went on to play a number of different roles for us. I speak, of course, of KRISTIan Bardsley. Well, we've had a few bits of good timing this year, and we haven't really meant any of them. Obviously, we spoke to Stephen Ziller the week that St Kilda played Richmond, and it just so happened to be that he'd played for both of them. We didn't do that on purpose. KRISTIan Bardsley is our next guest, and we play North this week, and he just so happened to play for both of them. Again, not necessarily by design, but he is with us this week. And KRISTIan, nice to have you with us to reflect on your journey.
No worries. Pleasure to be here.
Now, 58 games, 53 of those with the Saints, but the journey did start at North, recruited from Scoresby, which has been a massive part of your footballing life since and before. But can you take us through how you ended up at Arden Street and I guess those early ventures into AFL football?
Yeah, so we back then it was zoned. So our area was zoned to North Melbourne. So you probably couldn't have picked a further place to go from Cemetery Gully to North Melbourne. So had under 19s back then. So we used to catch a train to North Melbourne, Arden Street after school. There was, me, Damien Hardwick, and a few others, and we'd get a taxi home sort of thing. So I was there when I was 15, under 19s. So I had 3 years there, played 3 grand finals. We were pretty good in under 19s back at North, and we won 2, lost 1. So that was pretty good. And then had a couple of years in the senior group where I played 5 games. And and then after that, when I was delisted from North, I got picked up in the pre-season draft at St Kilda.
Before we talk about your journey at St Kilda, I wanted to ask you about 2 particular games out of those few at North. But your first one, your AFL debut, 18 touches, 2 Brownlow votes on debut.
Yeah.
That must have felt pretty good. What do you remember of that day and your footy debut? And then I guess at the other end of your North Melbourne time, your last game for North was against St Kilda, playing against Stewie Lowe and those guys in the midfield that you ended up joining the following year. What was it like? What did you learn playing against that midfield?
Oh, I think the first game I was pretty lucky because it was the first game I was out of 19s and I got picked to play, and I had a pretty good pre-season, and I was going okay, but I didn't expect to play. Had a good game. We played at Waverley. Had a few touches and got to kick a few goals. So the Brownlow vote surprised me, but you always take them. And then I think I played round 2, and then I missed the rest of that year. I just didn't get a game. And North had a pretty strong midfield back then. They were vying for finals, and it was pretty hard to get into. And then Shimmer was the coach for that year. Then next year was Dennis Pagan, who coached us in under 19. So that was good to get him back, and he had a good relationship with all the players because he coached a lot of them in the under 19s. My last game against St Kilda, which didn't realise was going to be my last game, and then all of a sudden within 6 months you're training with them and back playing with them. So it was a good experience to just first of all to play, and second of all to get picked up again.
So seems like it was a big time of change for yourself in that off season. You played at North Melbourne as Anning and came to St Kilda as Bardsley. What's the story behind that?
So Mum and Dad got divorced, and when Mum remarried, we assumed a family name, and it was just easier to use when we were at school. So we used the Anning, and then when I basically finished school, I moved it back to my proper name, which was Bardsley. So that's all it was. It was just more a convenience when we were growing up.
Now, in terms of coach sackings, normally when we speak to people that played for St Kilda, they've experienced one there, but you actually didn't. You had Stan Ells the whole journey through there, but you did at North, and it was an unusual sacking in that Wayne Schimmelbusch was sacked after a pre-season game where they lost to Adelaide by 140 points or something like that. It's very unusual to have a sacking at that stage of the year, but I imagine for you to get, at least at that stage, to get Dennis Pagan back as coach, given the success you'd all had, would have been a semi-positive, I guess.
Yeah, look, it was an unusual one, especially being during the pre-season. You don't tend to find that it happens before the start of the year in pre-season. And as I said before, Dennis had the relationship with everyone. So most of the guys there he'd actually coached before. So it was fairly seamless in terms of, knowing him, knowing us, and us knowing him, sort of thing. So yeah, that was pretty easy. But again, when any coach gets sacked, it's a little bit of upheaval. But yeah, it was just is what it was.
You mentioned that last game for North against St Kilda that you didn't realise was going to be your last game for North. When I guess that transition happened and you were delisted by North, St Kilda picked you up in the 94 pre-season draft.
Right.
Had you spoken to St Kilda before? Did you know that we were looking at you? Had you spoken to other clubs? Like, what was that process like for you?
So I hadn't spoken to St Kilda at all. I actually was talking to Brisbane, and they were fairly keen, and they were waiting to see what happened with Craig Lambert. So I got a call saying that they'll believe that Craig Lambert was going to go earlier, and that if he'd gone and I was still around, they'd take me. But Craig Lambert didn't go, and they recruited Lambert, and then got a phone call from St Kilda saying, "We picked you up. You need to come and training."
And then in a very sliding doors moment, you first senior game for St Kilda ends up being against North Melbourne as well. So it's the tables just turned ridiculously crazy here. How was it then coming out against the guys you've been playing with previously as well?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting because I actually knew more about the team we were playing than the team I was playing with, because back when it was a pre-season draft and it was in March, and I think it would have been maybe 2-3 weeks before the start of the year that I actually just joined the Saints, sort of thing. So it was interesting when you're running out there and you're looking around and you're playing against guys you've trained with for the last couple of years. But I was just happy to get the opportunity to keep playing.
Make sure you run the right way. Make sure you keep the right players.
That's right. Yeah, there was a bit of banter going out there, so that was always good.
Now, arriving at St Kilda after 93, so 93 was a tumultuous year for the Saints. They sacked Ken Sheldon. They had the Nicky Winmar issues through the year. They had a lot of challenges over that period. What was 94 like? I mean, it was a fresh start, but you probably hadn't known any different in terms of St Kilda at that point. But did it kind of feel like they were sort of rejuvenating, or was there a little bit of that residual issues from 93 at all?
Yeah, no, I didn't feel like there's any residual from 93. I think a lot of times when a new coach comes in, it's almost a slate wipes clean, and everyone starts afresh. I didn't do the pre-season, so if there was any residual, that would have been handled first up when they started the pre-season. So it was just basically get in there and started playing and get to know the teammates and the plans and all that sort of stuff. And it was just basically just walking into a new footy club and ready to go.
What's it like walking into that new footy club at Moorabbin, storied ground, even though we'd moved to Waverley by that point to play, and you're surrounded by guys like Danny Frawley and I guess the younger generation in Nathan Burke and Robert Harvey and those kind of guys, and Stuart Lowe, Plugger, etc. Like, what's that like for a young kid walking into their, I guess, second club after being delisted?
Yeah, it was pretty daunting because you're going in and these guys have already done the pre-season, so they're basically ready to play. I remember the day I actually arrived at the club, I was walking in and Danny was walking in at the same time, and he met me at the door and walked me in and introduced me to everyone. So, they were fantastic. All footy clubs are fantastic when you go to them. All the players are welcoming him and that sort of stuff. So the hardest part is probably the first part, walking in, and then you meeting everyone. Once you meet everyone, everything's just down to doing what you do and just playing footy. So, it is daunting though when you're first going to, and you've never really met anyone. But yeah, it's exciting as well with a new challenge.
And just to jump in really quickly, the facilities when you got to Moorabbin, how did it differ from Arden Street and your experiences there?
They were both pretty ordinary. Look, they weren't great, but you just got by. North was pretty much similar situation in terms of the facilities and that sort of stuff at Arden Street as well. So it was basically you just didn't do much different than what it was. So yeah, it was. They were both pretty much the same. It's you look at the facilities now and you think, geez, you'd love to be involved now with all the resources they have.
So you come in into the team in round 2, play 15 games of the season, sort of. It's pretty well a solid role that you end up getting into a team when you play that many games of the season. How did you feel like you fitted into the team that it was at that point, or you provided something different they didn't have, or where did you feel like you slid into there?
Yeah, probably early on, I didn't feel like I fitted in that well in terms of knowing the role and knowing the players. I think that, it was one of those things where it was just trying to learn what's going on with all the players. And I think later in that year, I'm pretty sure it was that later that year, I got moved down back for a game. I think it was at the Whitten Oval against Fitzroy, I think. And I did okay. And then that's when I probably found a role that suited what they wanted and what I needed. Because playing as a forward pocket or occasionally, and again, it was very hard to get into the midfield with like Burke Harvey, and then you had the kids like Ozzie Jones and Tony Brown, Joel Smith come through. It was just finding a role that fitted in the side. And I think when I went down back, that was probably the role that suited that they needed in terms of, and I started playing all right after that.
It's interesting that 94-95 period, St Kilda only won, I think, 30% of their games, but they won, I think, 48% of the games that you played in that period. So your strike rate was actually pretty good through that period. But you had some famous games in 94 as well. You spoke about playing well against Fitzroy there. You played okay in Tony Lockett's last game for the club against Collingwood the week before. And you also played in a famous Tony Lockett game earlier that year in round 7 where you've had 18 and made a good contribution. But what was that day like? I mean, St Kilda were 47 points down with 9 minutes to go in that game. It's an often not spoken about comeback. If you look about all of the great comebacks, to be 8 goals down inside the last 10 minutes and win, hazard a guess that's never been done before. But what was that experience like from your perspective?
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I suppose we got to the last quarter. We just had a go, and Plugger was just phenomenal. Ball just went near him, and he's got everything. So once we started kicking a few, it was just like a snowball effect, and just kept going, come out of the centre straight through. And yeah, it was a bit of a blur actually, but it was basically Plugger just had a day out, and he got us across the line.
You played in one draw in your career. It was a few weeks after that game against the Crows. What's it like playing in a draw? What are those feelings like at the final siren?
Yeah, it's a tough one because you haven't won, but you haven't lost. So your emotions are, well, how you're supposed to feel. And I suppose it's you go and say, and someone asked me a question the other day about, what do I think of draws? And I still have the opinion that during the year, home and away, a draw is a draw. Understand why in finals they make the change to play the extra time. But it's just a matter of, it was a good game and neither team were good enough to win, but neither team were bad enough to lose. So, it's the same as anything. Once you get off the ground, it's you start moving on to next week anyway. So it's just a funny feeling because you walk in the rooms and you're not singing a song because you haven't won, but you're not that disappointed because you haven't lost either. So it's a hard one.
So you get to end of 94. Basically, you've, as I said before, had a pretty good run for the season. How did that end of that season come up? I assume you would have had an exit interview for the year. You would have had a meeting with the coach and that sort of stuff. How did that all go? How did they approach you and say, look, next season, we've definitely got a spot for you to keep going and all that sort of thing? How did they approach you?
I think, from that point of view, it was more get the opportunity to have a proper pre-season with the club. As I said, round 2 I came in, but I was only, I think it was the last practice game before the start of the year that I only played my first game at the club sort of thing. And I think that with the amount of change the club had in terms of all the new recruits coming in, all the kids coming in, it was a bit of a change, and it was a build for getting better and getting some consistency out. So it was just more having a really good pre-season and getting ourselves fit and making sure we understand what we need to do and how we need to do it to make sure we get better from the following year.
A couple of famous wins in 95, the Carlton game, their last loss of the year. They won 20 in a row or something after that, but thumping them in the wet. I think they didn't kick a goal until probably a minute before three-quarter time in that game. But we had an awful year, but ended up winning, I think, 7 of our last 12 or something after that. So it felt like for a young group, that was a little bit of a turning point that day.
Yeah, I think in 95, we also played in the night grand final.
96.
Oh yeah. So we started to build and we got a bit of consistency in terms of how we played and what we wanted to do. So I think that the end of 95 was a good starting point. We'd only had like almost a year and a half of with Stan and with all the young kids coming through. So, and the young kids started to play a significant role in the side. And get the games under the belt. Like, you know, once they get to 20, 30 games, then you can start judging them as footballers. And they got to play a fair few games and they started developing and getting better. You always got the same out of the old faithful, like Burke, Harvey, Lowe, Winmar, all them. They performed every week. It was a matter of the ones on the outskirts in terms of the role players beginning to take a bit of ownership and delivering them what they needed to do as well.
Your role in 95, did that change or how did that evolve from the previous year? Because you increased your possession numbers up kind of 3 or 4 a game, tackle numbers increased. You weren't kicking as many goals as you had previously, but had your role evolved in that year? And I guess how did that happen through the course of the next couple of years? So
it was more to do with I think a need, and it was actually 95. I moved down back. And I played that game at the Whitten Oval. We got an injury, and it was almost like, I think, from my point of view, is that if that move hadn't have made that game, I reckon I might have got dropped the week after because I wasn't touching the footy a lot. And I moved back, and I started going okay in terms of playing down back on the smalls down back, and started winning the footy and getting more possessions and doing that sort of stuff. So, and I gave a little bit of run. So that change was more just luck in terms of, you know, someone got injured, they needed someone to go back down. I went down and it just started working.
So you just mentioned before about the 96 Ansett Cup, and we through those 4 weeks of football, we probably played some of the best football we'd seen from the club in a long time. And that's even looking back at 92, and it was just fluent football. It was fast football. It was hitting every single target. And did the club, I guess, purposely go out to try and, I guess, win something in that pre-season, or did everything just click and all of a sudden we became this team that comes out and knocks off last year's premiers by was it 10 goals in the end, and beat some other pretty good teams along the way, like a win in Adelaide and a win against West Coast, who won 2 of the last 3-4 premierships from before that. So did the team just click all of a sudden?
I think from our point of view, because we hadn't won many games the last couple of years, so we always said that every game we played we wanted to win, and we actually started playing well. And all of a sudden it was a bit of a snowball. We played well the first, second, third, and all of a sudden we're in the grand final. And I remember that day because I think there was about 77,000 there. It was out of control, and we were in the rooms downstairs, and you could hear everything above, and it's just we got out there, and I think we had another really good game. Things worked really well, and then all of a sudden we won the game, and I think after that we probably went a bit flat. So I don't think we had a real good start to the year in 96. But yeah, it was just a matter of building a winning culture and trying to win as much as we can. And we did take it seriously in terms of the I think it was the Ansett Cup, whatever it was. But we just wanted to win every game we played.
Looking at that start to the season, as you say, played North, who ended up winning the flag. You had 20 and took 9 marks in that game. But round 2, shootout that took us 26 goals to 20 at Cardinia Park, but you got knocked out, or not knocked out, but struck by Gary Ablett in a well-documented incident. I think he got a 5, possibly 6-week suspension. We were discussing it a little bit off air as to how many weeks you would have missed under the AFL protocols that didn't exist at the time, and how many weeks he might have been suspended for had he have done that now.
Yeah, so it was interesting. So under the protocols, I probably would have missed maybe 2 or 3. I got knocked out, and I had 18 stitches in the chin. So yeah, that would have been interesting. In terms of what he would have got, look, you're probably looking double digits from what it was. It was actually funny because that was Easter Saturday, and the headline was the next day was Christian encountered God. Yeah. So yeah, that was quite interesting. But yeah, it was one of those ones where it was just went to tackle him. He's lifted his elbow. He's got me and split me open and knocked me out.
Did you have any longer term ramifications from that concussion, or I guess, or any other concussion throughout the course of your career? Or after?
Yeah, look, I've done a bit of the concussion protocols, and we've worked it out. I've probably had close to 20 concussions.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think from my point of view, yeah, it may be yes. No, I've gone through some testing, and testing's been okay, but there's just certain things that happen now that you go and say, well, I can't remember this, can't remember that. So yeah, it's concerning, but we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, I think there is some little things starting to happen. But yeah.
Now, speaking of being able to hear things from underneath of Waverley, Saturday 8th of June, I remember it quite well because it was my birthday the day before, and we went to the footy on the Saturday night, and lights went out. Where were you on the field when it happened? What did you think was going to happen? And once you got down into the rooms, what were they sort of telling you, and what was going on?
I can't remember where I was. I was on the ground somewhere, but once it happened, everyone just stopped, and then all of a sudden we came over to the interchange bench. We had a bit of a chat with Stan and that sort of stuff. And then the game was called off, and we go into the change rooms, and I actually got drug tested that night. So we're walking in, and the drug testers were there, and I had to wait in the dark with them. It was like temporary lights that you could just see, and it was just something. It just felt like the game just didn't finish. And then we weren't actually even sure if it was going to get replayed, and eventually got replayed on the Tuesday. But yeah, it was just one of those things. And then all of a sudden you start hearing all the stuff that was happening on the ground, why the lights off and the post and that sort of stuff. And it's just like, yeah, things were just out of control. But yeah, once we got told the game wasn't going to start again, we just got down, got changed, and we started heading off. But yeah, it was a different sort of different game.
What happens after that game? I mean, do you kind of regroup together? Do you go back to Moorabbin, back to the club? Like, what do you do, or do you just go home and wait to hear?
No, I see, after back in the day, most times you'd have some sort of function back at the club or somewhere that you'd go to, where you get together. It wasn't probably until I think we had the recovery on Sunday that we were told that we had to play again on the Tuesday. And then you just basically start preparing to play again, sort of thing. But yeah, it was just one of those things that I don't think will ever happen again. But yeah, it was just a weird experience.
Looking at 97, so you've come into the side late in the year, or you played a couple of games, West Coast in the middle, Brisbane, and then Melbourne late on a Friday night. So that was on the eve of the finals. So in terms of that blend in the finals, St Kilda got a few injuries along the way there with Joel Smith and Matthew Young. How close were you in terms of fitness and form to maybe having an impact in that finals campaign? Yeah,
so I think for some reason, I think I was emergency like 16 or 17 weeks. So I was close. And then for the grand final, it was basically, from what I got told, it was between me and Robbie Neal, who played that last spot. And story of my life. They decided to go with someone taller. So yeah, they went with Robbie, sort of thing. So yeah, that was probably a disappointing year because I thought I was playing okay in the twos, but the team was going well and there wasn't a real spot for me. And I'd almost lost my spot down back. I think that year they moved Zills down back a bit, and Jason Cripps was playing down back, and they both were playing pretty good roles. So I was behind them.
What's it like? We've spoken to quite a few of the guys from that team previously, but what's it like, I guess, from not so much the outside, because obviously you're inside the club at that point. It's a super exciting time. First final series for half a dozen years or whatever it was. 10 in a row, full of excitement. What's it like kind of not playing and not being a part of the on-field excitement during that period?
Yeah, it is tough, because you're excited for your mates, but you're disappointed for yourself. But I think you just try to do as much as you can to put your name up, and if it's out of your control whether you get a game or not, and it's no point sulking and feeling sorry for yourself. It is also a team sport, and you're really pleased for all your teammates, and a little bit disappointed, probably quietly, that you're not getting a chance, but that's footy, isn't it?
Probably could have used another defensive type player on that Saturday.
Yeah, I would have been happy to play, put that way.
So, 98, end up only playing the one game. Were you playing reserves all year? Was there a couple of injuries there? So you basically played all year. Assume probably in that same situation of being close most of the season again and that sort of thing. Was it just that position wasn't there all year in that case and just couldn't break in?
Yeah, no, I copped a few. I was copped a few injuries, and so I had some hamstring injury and that sort of stuff. So I had a pretty interrupted 98. But getting towards the end of the year, I started getting a bit of fitness back. And at the end of 98, when Stan left, Tim Watson came in, and I had a conversation with him before pre-season started, and was basically said that if I was able to get fit over, because I had some injuries the last couple of years, if I were able to get fit over the pre-season, I'd get another contract, which from my point of view was good to know. But the problem was I got to Christmas time, and it was probably the fittest I've been in 4 years. Got called in, and they decided to chop me halfway through the pre-season, which meant that I actually couldn't go train with anyone else, because back then it was called prejudice to the draft. So if I had been delisted in November, I could have gone and trained with someone. But because I was on their list and I wouldn't get actually delisted till March, I actually wasn't able to do anything. So I had nowhere to train. I couldn't go anywhere. I'd train with either local footy club or VFL, which pretty hindered trying to get another opportunity. So that was really disappointing. But, again, it is what it is.
Well, it didn't end up not being the worst thing for you for 99. You stayed at Springvale and won the flag with them. Actually played with one of our coaches in Damien Carroll in the team.
Yep.
So how was that? Like, you sort of go, it's a great way to sort of missed out the opportunity, but then go on and play it in that premiership. And it'd been, I think, a little while since Springvale had won one as well, and but you still had the St Kilda teammates there, being with the affiliation and that sort of thing as well. So how did that season, the transition into that team and then the success go?
Yeah, I think so Kane Taylor and Mickey Dwyer were pretty big down there, and they got me down there. So that was good, and we had a pretty good side. So that was a really enjoyable year of footy. We won plenty of games, and I had a pretty good year until I hurt my Achilles probably 3/4 of the way through. So the last part of that year was interrupted, and then we got the finals, and I think in the first semi-final I got rubbed out for a week for tripping. First time ever reported. So missed the semi and played in the grand final, and then got knocked out in the first 10 minutes in the grand final. So the last part of the year wasn't great, but to win a grand final, it's always great to win a grand final, especially with those boys. We had a really good side that year.
Final one from me, obviously the football journey after that went back to Scoresby, which had been home and on and off for a couple of decades. You're at Bentley now. You had some success there as well. But what's it been like being able to consistently give back at local level and stay involved in a game you clearly love, that you're obviously able to play at the highest level for a number of years, but to still be involved in it today?
Yeah, I do love what footy, and the best part about footy at the moment is seeing kids develop. At Bentley right now, we've got a heap of kids that are fairly talented that we're trying to build a list together to be a really strong club. But to see them get better and the work they do and having a little bit of a part in terms of making them better and making them better human beings sort of thing is always good. But being involved in footy probably ever since I left in terms of coaching or something like that, it's been really good. I've gone from coaching senior footy, I've coached junior footy, I've coached under 19 sort of thing. So I've coached all the levels, and I still enjoy it. It's a different challenge today with some of the kids in terms of how you can interact with them, and they're probably not as I suppose engaged in footy. Like footy's not the be all end all. When we were growing up, you played footy, you played cricket, and that was just it. There's so many other things that these kids could and want to do. So you got to keep them engaged in what they're doing and just try to make it fun and enjoyable for them. But also, have that thought that, you still want to win. I'm a pretty competitive person, and we want to win. But it's building a plan so that when I leave the club's in a strong position than when I started.
Kristian, last one for me before we finish up. But you sound like you're pretty kind of retrospective about the way things finished for you at St Kilda. That's kind of the way it works, and it's unfortunate, whatever. But back then, as a 25, 26-year-old, whatever you were back then, was there kind of much bitterness or resentment to the club? And if so, I mean, what's your relationship with the club like now?
No, I don't think there's any bitterness. It's just, I was pretty lucky. I never thought I was that good. So I think I got the most out of what I had sort of thing. So you're always disappointed that, you couldn't keep going. But yeah, all my kids both St Kilda and they're going through the same thing we went through when we were playing, the highs and lows and hoping they can eventually win a grand final. But yeah, it's just one of those things you look back and go, well, unfortunately, that's just the way footy is, and you'd like it to finish on your own terms, but very rarely it does. And you just look back and say, well, it was, you wouldn't have probably changed anything.
Beautiful. It's been a pleasure reflecting on that journey with you. As you said, probably from your mid-90s team, we've probably spoken to 20 blokes now. Maybe it's our favourite era of footy coming out. It seems that way, I think, on reflection. But it's been terrific to add you to that list, and good luck with your ongoing involvement in footy, and we appreciate you sharing your journey with us.
No worries. Thanks for the call.
Kristian Bardsley has done a terrific amount of work coaching at local level. We look towards North Melbourne.